Bitcoin is the first perfect money, the first monetary instrument in the history of the world that is a properly engineered store of value. The second best money is gold, and the second best money has a half-life of 30 years, and the first best money has a half-life of forever. And so the first best is so much better. Of course, intelligent physicists, economists that understand physics, or capitalists that understand physics are going to discover that. And as they discover that, they're going to buy it and build an industry around it and recapitalize on it. And they're going to draw concentric circles of other investors I basically channel billions of dollars into the Bitcoin ecosystem, Tom, from investors that don't understand Bitcoin. They just want to do convertible arbitrage, or they want to do option trading. There are a lot of people that hate Bitcoin, and they come into the ecosystem because they just want to short my stock. So they short my stock and buy Bitcoin and create demand for Bitcoin, you see. So those are all secondary and tertiary investors. They have capital, they have money, and they want to play some game, whether it's short, long, trading, fixed income. People that have bought my bonds and they just wanted interest on the bonds, and they indirectly funded Bitcoin. So my company is an actor to recruit other investors. Anybody else in the ecosystem is recruiting other investors. But the fundamental physics of this equation is, this is the world's first perfect money. That's Bitcoin, the asset, and Bitcoin, the network, is the greatest global open capital network in the world. It is free digital capital, 24/7, 365. 1,500 crypto exchanges are plugged into it, and it is the number one source of credit, and capital access everywhere in the world right now. And so that's why it is performing. That's why it's attracting capital.
When I think about what the stock market is and why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, a substantive part of this is that this is an extremely complicated game. That as many times as I've researched you and followed this, I'm just now beginning to put all the pieces together of how this all actually works. But there is this incredible opportunity that, like you said, if you've got somebody that really understands the economics and the physics of it all, there's an opportunity that's staring everybody in the face. You guys have built in a layer that the analogy that you use of turning crude crypto money into refined capital equities, absolutely brilliant. And so you guys have set up what I think of, and you didn't say one way or the other if this felt right to you, but it continues to feel right to me, is you've taken a microcosm of the entire equities financial market, all the ways, my words, that people are able to bet on equities, and backed it by Bitcoin, allowing people this incredible, again, my words, casino layer on top of Bitcoin, so that people can take the kind of risk that they're comfortable taking, that the governance bodies of their organizations force them to interface in that way. I mean, it's just absolutely brilliant. So now my question becomes, given the freakish success that you've had with this, that at least I look into the future and say, okay, this is going to keep going for a while. Were you shocked when Microsoft voted against, and I know you were not presenting them to do the full casino layer, my words, on top of the Bitcoin, but were you shocked that even just getting them to think of recapitalizing in Bitcoin was so soundly rejected? Did you just look at that and say, they're stupid, they don't get it? Like, what's happening?
We say in Bitcoin that Bitcoin's on a need-to-know basis. So the people that get Bitcoin because they need to. If you're wet, freezing to death, and you walk past a fire, you're going to stop, throw a log on the fire, and you're going to dry your clothes, because otherwise you're going to freeze to death. You have a need to know it. If, on the other hand, you're a rich man and you have a massive ski chalet in Aspen with 10 people working for you, and modern heating and air conditioning, and a chef, and 3 cars and a helicopter in the back, and you've got a dinner party planned and you're walking past a little flickering fire, you're probably going to think I should put it out. I'm probably going to step on that fire because it looks like a threat to me. Microsoft is probably one of the 5 most successful companies in the world out of 50,000 publicly traded companies and 400 million private companies. They're not exactly the shivering, naked, starving dude running through the forest on the mountainside, right? They don't need it. It's quite optional for them, right? The people that discover Bitcoin are when you live in Nigeria and the bank or Lebanon and the bank freezes your assets and you're either going to starve to death and be bankrupt or you're going to have learned about Bitcoin. They have a need to know. If you live in a hyperinflating economy in Russia or in Venezuela or in Argentina, you're going to know. If you remember your family fleeing Nazi Germany in the 30s and losing everything, if that story's been told to you by your grandfather or your great-grandmother, right, then that resonates and you think, yeah, I think I'd like to be able to flee with my money, when the government goes bad on me. So I think that the message of this is shareholders in a well-run public company do whatever management tells them because they're not looking to pick a fight. The network reward is a function of the block rewards of the miners, and they will continue between now and the year 2140, and the transaction fees. And the transaction fee economy is an open free market economy. If you want your transaction to be processed in the next 10 minutes, you have to be the high bidder. And there's only 5,000 slots. And so the most important 5,000 transactions in the world are going to get to the top of the queue based upon the transaction fee of the broadcaster. This is why it's important to have scarce block space, because as long as the block space is scarce, the transaction fees will trend up over time. And as more people want to do more transactions, they will bid up the transaction fees. And right now, they're a small fraction of the rewards, but I think 10 years from now, they'll be the majority of the rewards for sure. And I think by 2035 and onward, most of the revenue that comes from the miners will be based on transaction fees. And transaction fees are a durable business model forever. I mean, every real estate company, every financial service provider, they all work on transaction fees. I mean, it's fine. Like, I want to move $1 billion from point A to point B. Would I pay $10? Of course I would. Would I pay $100? Sure. If you wanted to buy $1 billion building and take clear title of it in Manhattan, what do you think the transaction fees are on that? Right? I mean, you could spend $1 million to move $1 billion. You could easily spend 10 basis points. How about the last time you sold your house? What's the transaction fees to sell a house to someone else? And how long does it take, by the way? Right? So when you think about it that way, like if I could sell my house in 30 days and it was $1 million house, would I pay 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% interest or in fees? Yeah, I would. If I paid 1% fees, I think that's cheap. Well, 1% fees on $1 million transfer of Bitcoin, right? That's going to support the network. So the beauty is, I don't think the transaction, I think Bitcoin's always going to be 100 times to 1,000 times more efficient to transact in than other instruments. Then I would acknowledge it's a problem for the human race. It's a problem for every government, every company, every individual. Because if I really can crack cryptography, that means everything that's digital in your life is now at risk. That means I can launch nuclear weapons. That means I can take over the government. That means I can have the Interpol kick your door in and shoot you with a fake arrest warrant, right? So the point really is all of civilization breaks down into chaos if Dr. Evil gets the hypothetical quantum computer that really does work. Let's imagine that threat. What's my response? The response is obvious, which is every computer scientist on the planet has a vested interest in upgrading the cryptography that we use to secure our networks and our systems. We will do that. If the quantum computer, the quantum chip that Google offered actually threatened cryptography, Google's own engineers would be releasing a set of upgrades to their own encryption, and they'd be huddled with Microsoft engineers right now, because Google and Microsoft would be the two biggest losers. And if they didn't, Zuckerberg would be doing it at Meta. So ultimately, it's not a Bitcoin specific thing. It's a human race specific thing. And let's just reframe it as, what happens if we come up with a computer that can break our current SHA-256, techniques, or our current cryptography? And the answer is, we're going to upgrade it. We'll upgrade the software. Bitcoin is at its core, it's a protocol. Like English, like math. If I come up with a way to hack your phone and send a message from you to the government saying you're going to topple the government, I have corrupted your communication technique, but you're not going to abandon English, are you? Right? And if I come up with a protocol to basically put false numbers into your database, that doesn't mean you're going to abandon base 10 math. I mean, Bitcoin is a bunch of honest people, smart money. They all decided that they were going to store their money in a bank in cyberspace that they trust. The bank is getting upgraded all the time. The software is upgraded every year. The hardware is upgraded every year. And so the implementation of the protocol will change over time. And if there is a quantum threat, we will react to the quantum threat, just like if you were to go to the Microsoft shareholder meeting and said, hey, I heard Google just released the quantum chip and it looks like it's going to crack your cryptography, and therefore should I sell my Microsoft stock and buy quantum yo-yo stock? I bet you Satya Nadella would say, no, don't buy quantum yo-yo stock, because it's an overdone fear, and quantum yo-yo doesn't actually have the support of every company on earth, and doesn't have a multi-trillion dollar market cap, and it doesn't have all of our engineers, and everybody on earth hasn't decided to standardize their office products on quantum yo-yo whatever stock. They're using Microsoft. Don't worry, we're adults. If it does become a threat in the future, we'll upgrade our software to deal with the threat when it happens. For now, the reason people buy Bitcoin is it's better monetary protocol. And the reason that they use Google is it's a better search engine. And the reason they use Microsoft is it's a better enterprise software suite. All three of them have to deal with this uncertain thing we call the future. And I think that they'll probably figure it out. If they don't figure it out, right, then they'll be replaced with something better. But I put my money on Bitcoin first, because the protocols, whether it's the metric system or the English language or base 10 math or Bitcoin, those protocols, they're the most durable thing in the human race, and they will outlast the companies and the countries. Bitcoin isn't medium exchange. It isn't a currency. It's capital. It's digital gold. What the government ought to do is sell their gold. They have $600 billion of gold. They ought to just sell it and buy Bitcoin with it. And you could buy 20 or 25% of the Bitcoin network with the proceeds from selling the gold. The goal ought to be for the US just to buy 4 or 5 million Bitcoin. After you do that, you've demonetized the gold network. So the gold network is the 19th century world reserve capital network. You might as well just sell it all. The people that will own it will be the enemies of the United States. And the gold network will go from being worth $20 trillion to being worth $4 trillion or $3 trillion. You'll just drive it into the ground. Gold will go to $200-300 an ounce. And anybody holding gold as a reserve asset is bankrupted, or has a worthless rock, just a shiny, heavy rock. and you're buying Bitcoin in the swap, and then Bitcoin goes to hundreds of trillions of dollars a coin, and you end up with $50 trillion to $100 trillion of capital. And then what happens to the US? The US becomes the economic leader of the world for the next 100 years. We're the richest country in the world. We negate the entire debt. If you generate a $50 trillion capital gain with Bitcoin, you offset the existing national debt, and you become a net creditor nation, and the dollar permeates everywhere.